I was only 20 when
I honestly believe that the arts and music and writing, that it'll ultimately save veterans' lives. I went to Iraq in October of 2006, and by the time it hit February 13th, my Humvee was blown up 4 different times, and one of my buddies was shot and killed beside me. They teach you every single thing you need to do to survive in war. There's no class that teaches you how to come home. And what I wanted to do with Creative Vets is set up situations that you don't turn down. I'm going to take you down to Nashville, and we're going to write a song, just me and you, with these professional songwriters. That's a little harder to turn down. It's opening up their mind to thinking of new ways, turning these negative situations into positive, and getting them to do something that will help them for the rest of their life.
one life ended, one life started, one night in Iraq.
In part one of our Veterans Voices Town Hall, we looked at how some veterans deal with such issues as military downsizing and how some have found much needed legal and emotional support while fighting for VA benefits. We also explored the issues specific to our women in uniform. Tonight, we consider the healing process. Good evening. I'm Lisa Godley. Virginia is home to more than 800,000 veterans, and for thousands of them, the wounds of war have taken a toll. Some are left with visible scars, but for others, the wounds aren't as recognizable. According to the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, between 11 and 20% of veterans who served in Operations Iraqi and Enduring Freedom have PTSD. We begin tonight with one family's struggle with the invisible wounds of war.
We started off at about 4 in the morning. It was a large company-sized clearing operation, and I assumed the overwatch position for the dog team. We're trying to hurry to get the things done, you know, the sun's coming up. The young Marine was behind me. His left foot was in my right foot, you know, just being that far off, out of step. And he stepped on an ID. There was a pressure plate that was right there. I just remember picking myself up and turning around, and everything was like gray and dusty.
Nobody can see us, just put us right there.
As we moved up to the Marine, I realized what happened.
Are you breathing?
His right leg was gone.
Hey, buddy, you're gonna be all right, okay? Just keep talking to me, okay? IED went off.
There's just nothing better than a homecoming. There's nothing more exciting than that day where you see all the military welcomed home by their friends and loved ones and families. You get to have him home, and he'll be able to help take part with the kids, and he'll be able to help with the house, and just you feel the sense of relief off your shoulders. But unfortunately, when Chuck came home, we had that maybe for a little bit, maybe a week or two, and then it just kind of started to unravel. You know, we would find him in a back room kind of having an emotional breakdown where he'd just be crying and he wouldn't understand why, or he'd be extremely upset. He would always want to be around the children, but he couldn't be. He physically just couldn't handle it. It was too much.
I knew I was being, in my opinion, ridiculous when I was having reactions. You know, somebody slams the door and I turn around, or, you know, we don't have balloons in the house anymore. The Mylar ones are okay because they don't really pop, but the, you know, the little helium balloons or whatever, you know, they pop. And I remember I was holding my youngest, and this was probably in August or September of 2011. And the kids were playing with balloons after dinner, and I'm holding them and all this, and they popped a balloon. And I put them down and went and threw up in the bathroom. I couldn't help it. You know, just, it was involuntary, you know, these sort of things. Like, what was that about?
Chuck's character is the type that's just full of life and full of laughter. I'm the type of person, you're not going to stay in bed for another day. You're going to get up. You're going to get showered and you're going to get going because we have stuff to do, you know. These kids need you. So, I mean, he's had this kind of tough love, but it got to that point where I finally understood he's really in a lot of pain. People don't get it. They go through a lot, and so you just hope that others can understand that invisible wounds are just as serious.
And you can't escape it. There's nothing you could do. And it's just totally, you know, it's like carrying around a refrigerator on your head, on your shoulders. You know, it's just incredible. Like it weighed me down. It stopped me from doing everything.
We're in front of the TV one day, just in the middle of the afternoon, and a news segment came on that stated, you know, new PTSD treatments. And I said, let's just see what this is about.
It was Liz that said, hey, we're doing this. Let's try this. Who cares? Just give it a shot. And then we saw the thing on TV. She's like, I'm going to call. I was like, whatever.
Literally, I called the phone number that they provided right away. And it went right to Dr. Harch and Dr. Harch's wife, Juliet. And I will never, you know, forget that day ever, because she said, absolutely, we can help your husband 100%.
Seeing that there was, you know, spots in my brain that didn't have blood flow, you know, extremely decreased, you know, like lights out in certain spots. And explained it. He said, hey, your left frontal lobe, look at that. Like nobody's home. You know, that's all your emotions and your short-term memory and all this stuff. You know, I said, well, if you can just get me off one pill, I'm good. You know, after about 2.5 weeks, I just got rid of the pills for the migraines and everything. And a lot changed after that, because they were, you know, having their side effects as well. So it was pretty awesome to not have to deal with that. Something that used to occupy 90% of my day, waiting for it to happen, or dealing with it when it did, or living in fear of being grateful that it's gone, you know, that sort of stuff. It just didn't have it anymore.
It's pretty much brought him back to life, to see this kind of light turn back on. I mean, he just, you can't even put it into words what he looks like when he walks in that door, and he's just so happy to be home.
Chuck and Liz Rotenberry knew they needed help and would stop at nothing to find it. But for thousands of veterans whose PTSD goes untreated, the consequences can be devastating. The lengths Chuck and Liz Rotenberry went to for treatment were incredible, and so were the results. Liz Rotenberry, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Liz, where is Chuck now with his treatment?
The treatments did go great, but they're not a cure. They're not going to improve the traumatic brain injury greatly, and the post-traumatic stress, but they are going to help in some ways. And we were about 1.5 years now into it, and he's done well, but a lot of the signs and symptoms are coming back. Migraines, irritability, exhaustion, everything you can name for traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress. But we are going to have to seek more treatment soon.
Dr. Priscilla Hankins, with Chief of Mental Services with the Hampton VA, what is the first thing that you tell someone when they come in and they've been diagnosed with PTSD?
Once they are referred for an evaluation, that's where we start. It's with the evaluation to go through a comprehensive assessment to determine if there's PTSD and what other symptoms, medical and psychiatric disorders or substance abuse may exist.
Liz, how did you explain to the children? I remember in the video and during the interview that Chuck was talking about the balloon popping, and, you know, how do you explain to the children what Daddy is going through?
I felt it was necessary to explain to them, you know, Daddy's been injured. And I know that they heard the phone call with Marine Corps headquarters when they called me to tell me, you know, your husband's just been injured. So from that second on, we involved them. I told them, and I said, you know, Daddy's got migraines. He's irritable. He's tired. He's not going to be able to play. You can't be as loud today. And I would say to them, I know that this is really tough. This is a life changer for us, but we can do this and we can work together. And I also try to make time for him to take care of himself so that we're working together as a family so that he can go kind of reprieve and come back and join them and make things better.
Thank you so much. Ray joins us now. I understand, Ray, you're airborne?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I've been a veteran from Vietnam from 1971, and I've been in therapy for about 33 years right now. The memories that you have will always be with you. You have to learn to live with it like it's your right arm. And so there's a lot of combat veterans now that we almost commit suicide. We'll walk that path, but we have put a gun to it. Well, we was going to take our life. And then the thing that's also that is there, sure, our wife is the caregiver, but we also create PTSD for our spouse. I have learned that we also create PTSD for our children and also the grandchildren. And so it's not only us that need support for PTSD. We need to support the whole family. And so I applaud you in what you're doing. That's all I have to say, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to thank Ray for his service and really taking the courage to speak about his experience and some of the pain that he has experienced. And he made a lot of great points, and one of them is about the importance of the support of the family, because post-traumatic stress does not only affect the individual, it affects the family as well. It affects the spouse, it affects the children, it affects extended families, co-workers, and very often it's very difficult for the individual to open up and talk about what's going on, but the family sees it. And so it is very important that the family be a partnership in helping to treat the veteran, recognizing those signs, and sometimes bringing to their awareness when they are having some difficulties that sometimes they don't recognize. One of the programs that we have embraced at the Hampton VA, which is really VA nationwide, is the Caregiver Support Program, which is a recognition that the family needs help, needs support, and they, as the caregiver, are able to supply services to the veteran, make sure that veteran gets to their appointments, but also if they are having emotional distress, they can also get treatment through the VA on a limited basis.
Liz, what was it explaining what Chuck was going through to not just your children, but the extended members of your family, your parents, his parents? What was that process like, and how were they receiving that?
It took us several years to really understand what he was going through, and it actually was the VA Caregivers Program that really brought it to light for me, because I couldn't see the wounds. It's tough. As a spouse, I 100% stand by my husband and know that when he's hurting and he's having a tough day, that I have to believe that and give him the space he needs to do that. And so do the kids. And it's very true. PTSD really does run down the chain, and we call it secondhand PTSD in our family, because the kids are all affected. And our immediate family did come around. Once we moved closer, we got out of the service. We're now literally about 2 blocks from my sister and an hour from all of our family. So their involvement is very important to us, because your family really is your rock. They're the ones that you're going to rely on the most. So we try to explain to them. I can remember it was right before his HBOT treatments, right before we were getting ready to go. And a lot of times the family is in denial at first. When you try to explain it to his parents or to my parents and they can't see the physical wounds, it's very difficult. And families can sometimes be your harshest critics at first. They don't want to see that pain in their son. They don't want to see them suffering. So, it really just took time repeating and telling them, Chuck, this is what's happening to Chuck. This is what's happening to your son, to your son-in-law, and we really need your support. We really need you to understand that, there are days where he's not going to want to participate in family events. but that doesn't mean we don't want to be there. It's that he physically can't be there. So it took a little while, a little bit of constant, convincing of this, understanding it, why he has to wear black sunglasses almost everywhere we go when he's indoors. He's not being rude. He can't stand, he's very hypersensitive to the light. He can't take the light. So it took a little bit of time, but.
Okay, thank you. Chantel's here. She has a question.
Hi. So when you received your phone call that your husband was injured, how did you prepare yourself to support your husband for when he came home?
Good question. It was a little difficult because when you're getting a phone call and not a doorbell, you're very, in a way, relieved. Okay, he's injured, and the Marine Corps informed me, he's received minor physical wounds. He was 3 feet from a blast, and the Marine behind him, who literally stepped one footprint off, did lose both his legs. So when you have this understanding of what he's been through, but you're being told he's fine, he's going to stay on the FOB, he's going to recover for 2 weeks and go back out on missions, you think everything's okay. And they, took care of the physical wounds he had to his face and neck. And that's all I really heard. I didn't hear anything more from his unit. I didn't hear from too many people about it because at the time, this was 2011, traumatic brain injuries weren't quite being talked about as much as they are now. And so it wasn't thought of, it wasn't addressed. But when he stepped off that bus, I was expecting my husband to come back. I was expecting the father that he was to come back to help me cut the grass, take care of the house, pay the bills. But within 2 weeks, I noticed this wasn't the same man that left in November that came back in July. And so to prepare myself, I didn't get the opportunity to because it wasn't discussed. Traumatic brain injuries and visible wounds weren't talked about. I think more so now they are, and more people are getting prepared for when their spouses or family members come home. So that's the good news, is more people are getting more informed.
Dr. Hankins, what do you say to people that say, I can handle this, I don't need medication, I'm dealing with this all on my own, but you can tell they need some help?
We work to gain the trust of the veteran because this is a change in the lifestyle or things that they are used to. And so, as Elizabeth said, it's not something that happens right away. Sometimes it takes several attempts, several efforts. Engaging the veteran to open up and talk about what's going on. Also involving the family is very important because they want to be the way they were as they remember. And as Elizabeth said, once they come back and they want to come home, things are different. Roles change, the expectations change, and it takes a lot of effort to really encourage them to get into treatment, to bring the family, and to start to accept that there are some things that are going to be different and different roles that they have to take.
Dr. Hankins, thank you. Liz Rotenberry, thank you so much for
you.
being here. While PTSD is certainly not the only reason that some veterans end up homeless, left untreated, it can be an end result. According to the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans, about 12% of the country's homeless population are veterans, and about 1.4 million other veterans are at risk of becoming homeless because of poverty, dismal living conditions, and a lack of support networks. But thanks to programs like Vets House, there are places out there giving homeless veterans a fresh start.
I was married for 32 years. Once she died, there was no one to keep me in check. And I really didn't care. The last year before I got clean, I spiraled real hard. I probably think in the back of my mind, I may have been trying to kill myself. When I came out of rehab, I still had my house, but I was so far behind on everything that there was no pulling it back together at that point. And then I got a hotel, but hotels, you can't afford to stay in those that long. And they were flea bag hotels. You know, you didn't even really want to. I felt better in the truck than I did in the hotels. I'd heard, I don't even know how I heard about it, the vet house, but somehow I got the number and found it. And from there, that's when everything turned around. There's no red tape to get into the vet house. It's just an interview, one-on-one, with a man that knows if you're BSing him or not.
Vets House is a 12-month transitional housing program geared towards serving homeless veterans. We're smoke-free, drug-free, and alcohol-free. We are a working program, meaning if you don't have a job and you come to us, I give you 60 days to find a job on your own. If you don't find a job on your own, then I'll step in and see what else I can do to try to help you find gainful employment.
The first person that trusted me after I was off drugs, you know, he's kind of the only guy. He didn't say, oh, you got it made now because you kicked. He kind of said, hey, you know, you got to keep your act together. You got to do right, do what you're supposed to do. And he didn't really yell or anything. He just told me, you know, you can do it.
And he and I became friends, and we started talking about recovery and what I could do for him and what he could do for me. And he just flourished. He is the type of person that will give you the shirt off of his back, and anytime I need something from Dan, I just give him a call. He'll help us in the garden. He'll help us harvest pecans because we sell them. Dan's very instrumental in helping us out. He comes in to tell the guys his story, how he got started in Vet's House, and also explain to them the end results, what you have to do in order to become successful.
And for me, it's paid off. I mean, I've paid off to where I feel like I'm living a comfortable life.
I started going to school, which I wasn't doing before I came.
So it's kind of neat getting back with the bond with the guys. Just like when you're in the Army, you sit around and BS all day, talk about what you're going to do when you get home.
He just kind of demands that you put that faith and trust in him. He will do everything he can to show you, hey, I'm for real, I'm genuine.
How do you think you would turn out if you hadn't met him? Or where do you think you'd be right now?
Probably dead.
Yeah, I would either be.
I'll answer that. He'd have been dead the doornail from heroin overdose.
That's what kept my sobriety. Or I would be dead, or in jail, or in the hospital. One of those three, and Deb would have been the first one. After 2 years at the vet house, it was time for me to move on, but that's when the Community Development Corporation came into it, and they at that time had a transitional program. This is my house. I'm not staying with anybody. I've got my key. I come and go as I want.
When I first went in the military at age 16, I was in the administrative field, you know, and I've always loved to do something to help other people. And this is no different than that, you know. If I figure that I can help that person who's down and out, I'm going to help him or her.
You know, if I could just get one guy, go stay at the vet house, you know. Don't sleep out there on the street. It's rewarding. It helps me, in a way, stay sober. I wake up in the morning. I don't need anything to get me up and going. I've got a clear heart and a clear mind, and that's all you got to have.
Willard Smitty Smith has run Vet's House in Virginia Beach for the past 25 years. He joins us now here in the studio with another Vet's House success story. Dan Halleck, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Smitty, I'm going to start with you. When someone comes in to Vet's House, what do you tell them about what you're going to do for them?
First, I want to assess their needs. What do you need? What do you want me to do? How can I help you? Then we'll go from there. If he's unemployed, I will try to get him a job. If he wants to go to school, or she wants to go to school, we'll follow that avenue. But basically, I just tell them, hey, you know, all you have to do is put your faith and trust in me, faith and trust in yourself, and you can flourish.
Okay. All righty. Dan Halleck, what's going on with you since our cameras were first invading your household and talking to you about your story?
I'm still employed at the same company. They're good local company that have supported me through the years. I'm still good friends with Mr. Smith. I go and volunteer. I'm living in the house now. As I said, it's mine. And everything's going great. I'm back with my family, my 2 sons. We're starting a little business for when I retire. And everything's going just excellent. It's going very well.
That's great. Also on our panel today is Jake Hutchins from civilianjobs.com. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having
Jake.
me back.
Jake, you know, you're here because employment is important. Because if people don't have a job, then they can't afford a house, and then they may end up in that situation. What do you say to someone who comes in, they've done a boots on the ground kind of job, and they're like, well, these are my skills. What can you do for me?
And this has been really exciting day for me. I meet a lot of Vietnam vets, and when we hear Elizabeth's story and we hear these other stories about what's happened, and you guys have kind of continued the fight for my generation, and I want to thank everybody here for doing that. It's getting better now. And part of that reason is we tell the stories about how those transitioning skill sets, what that military candidate brings to the table to companies. And what I would encourage all of those veterans that are out there now is focus on those translatable skills. If you were a mechanic, focus on those skills, but also focus on the soft skills. What about the leadership things you've done in the service? You know, a lot of folks don't understand that on time, every time in the military, that's what we do. We can't help it. Corporate America doesn't always see that every day. Now, that's a trait you have, and that's a good trait you have. And being able to talk about those stories as a veteran and what you've done in the service really gets corporate America excited, and it'll help you in that transition moving out of the military.
Smitty, what is the biggest misconception that you think the general public has about Vets House?
Homeless veterans are dregs of the earth. You know, there are several reasons why people become homeless. Some is PTSD, some is drugs, some is alcohol. Could be the person who's been working for years and years, and all of a sudden, a massive layoff occurred. Then you have the other segment where a guy was married or living with a lady, and they have a spat. They tell them, hey, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. You're going to have to leave. Consequently, they became homeless. So there's a myriad of reasons why a person is homeless, not necessarily because they're the dregs of the earth. You got some real skilled people who are homeless, actually who are participating in my program. And people just need to realize, hey, these guys, you know, they are our future leaders. You never can tell what Dan could have turned out to be when he first came to me when he was using that heroin. No one knows. Me, I'm a recovering alcoholic. You know, no one helped me. I wish they could have, but you know, programs like this weren't available when I decided to stop drinking. But people just need to put a lot more faith in programs such as Vets House. We're not the only program in town. There are other programs out there, but we're the best. Seriously, for years and years and years. Now, we were born in 1992. Now, they start getting these other homeless or transitional housing programs within the last 6 or 7 years. For years and years, Vets House was the only transitional housing program in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Dan, what do you tell another young veteran who may be in the same shoes that you were in when you came to Vets House? When you sit there and we were able to videotape one of the rap sessions that you had with some of the guys. What do you tell them to inspire them or to encourage them?
One thing that is wrong are the veterans on the side of the road with the signs begging for money. Those guys aren't for real. That's the worst service it shows on the veterans. It makes them look like they're just begging. And those guys are out there begging. There's no reason now that a veteran can't have a roof over his head. He's just got to put his mind to it, obey a couple of rules, and do what you're supposed to do. And the information's out there. There's a lot of places homeless veterans can go now. There's no reason to be homeless nowadays if you're a veteran.
Okay. Tim now joins us with a question. Go right ahead.
Hi. I'm a Marine Vietnam veteran, and I've dealt with some of the dark issues of PTSD, and am still, in fact, dealing with that and the ravages of Agent Orange. But as I end a second career, retired from the Postal Service, getting ready to retire from real estate, my heartstrings pull me towards helping the veteran, the homeless veteran.
Well, I tell you what, it'd be an honor to have you to get in touch with me and assist me.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Jake, what civilian jobs? I know we came across you guys during a job fair. What's going on now with civilian jobs as far as helping veterans find jobs?
Yeah, things are getting really exciting. We've already started to solidify our 2016 calendar. We'll have roughly 60 events next year, growing from 30 events all across the country. My team will be at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, coming up here in 2 weeks, and then we'll be back at ODU and Fort Lee here in early next summer. So we'll have a couple more events going on.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it. All right. Smitty, what do you say to somebody that's coming in and they need some help, but maybe they're not sure that this is for them, but they're homeless?
Well, I'll tell you, I will tell them that Vets House's #1 is no-nonsense program. I am just as hard can be. Matter of fact, there are a couple of guys in this room who were in my program, and they will tell you, I don't even play the radio. Okay? If you want help, I will do everything in the world to assist you. I've loaned guys money. I've taken them on job interviews. I've just done a multitude of things. But don't come there and thinking that you're going to get over on me, because it's not going to happen. No shape, no form, no fashion. I am what I am, and we have a curfew. You'll abide by the curfew. You'll clean the house up. You do your chores. If I have an evolution I need help on, you will assist me, because if you don't, you're not a team player. If you're not a team player, I don't need you. So I would do everything I can to help anybody who is sincere about the program. And we just, last May, we happened to open a house for female veterans. So I have 4 female veterans right now. And I tell them, you're no different than the guys. You roll your sleeves up, you cut your own grass, you do your house chores around the house, and if I need some help picking up clothing or whatever have you, I expect for you to do that.
Okay. Shanita, you have a question?
Yes. I've run a homeless veteran program, supportive services for veteran families at the STOP organization. And my question is for Dan. In your homeless experience, what advice would you have for the homeless programs? How can we improve to ensure that the homeless veterans are aware of the programs that cater to them and that will help them move into permanent housing?
Homelessness has changed a lot among veterans. When I was out homeless, I tried the federal, state, and city, and I didn't know where to go. And then somehow, I don't even remember how, I found the vet house. It was through a flyer, or someone mentioned it to me. But 5 years ago, in that time, it's really changed. There's a lot of programs. It's advertised. Every time I go to the VA hospital, there's flyers everywhere about if you need help, here's where you can go. If you're homeless, go see this PAC, whatever. So it's just for the asking now.
Yeah, I think that, and this is kind of a good segue for all of the things we've talked about today, there's no lack of goodwill really across the country and Virginia. It's just about the veteran being the squeaky wheel and saying, hey, I need help with this program, whether it's PTSD, whether it's finding a job, whether it's being homeless. There is no lack of goodwill in Virginia. The veteran has to be that squeaky wheel and go out and ask for help, which is hard sometimes for us to do. We have trouble doing that. But if you do ask for help, there are great organizations like this and others that will assist.
Okay. Kit joins us now with a question. Go right ahead.
Yes, how you doing? I have a question for Dan. The fact that you used to be on drugs, which I thank you for getting off of the drugs, that's truly a miracle. What would you say to the veterans and people in general that's watching this program that probably be on drugs as they watch this program? How do you get off it?
If you're a veteran, you got to go to the hospital and ask for help. There's no, I'm going to cut back. There's no, I'm just going to use a little bit. You have to go ask for help. I was an addict for almost 25 years off and on. I became a really professional addict while I was in the service. And after my wife died, I became a real pro. And I finally just reached the proverbial low, but I had to go to the hospital. I had to ask for help. And like you said, it's hard for veterans and certain guys to ask for help. But you're not a horrible person because you're a drug addict. And if you pick up the phone, you call the VA, you call one of these organizations like the Vet House, they'll even probably take you to the hospital. I would take you to the hospital. I mean, it's out there. You just have to get to the point where you want to ask and believe in yourself and you want the help.
Willard Smitty Smith, thank you so much. Dan Halleck, thank you so much. And Jake Hutchins, thank you so much for being our guest. Tonight we have tackled some pretty tough issues: PTSD, homelessness, and unemployment. Issues that might leave anyone experiencing them depressed. Depression is something the athletes you're about to meet were able to overcome by training and competing in adaptive sports. There are scores of sports out there for veterans who want to learn, among them running, archery, basketball, and paddling.
I spent 3 weeks in a coma where they put me there to recover. So I had a ruptured aorta along with a plethora of other injuries. I escaped from the hospital with doctor's approval, and I went home with the parents to spend another 6 weeks recovering. I stuck with denial. Didn't think about it. Just started focusing on what I could do. Went out and sat on a kayak and paddled for about 10 minutes. Thought it was pretty neat, but I'd like to go faster. And they put me in contact with Chuck.
So he got in touch with me right away. Typical Marine, dear sir, I was given your number, blah, 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 very respectfully. So all formal and everything. So of course, anybody that wants to paddle, I'm all in for getting them in a boat, figuring it out. I know we've helped lots of vets, through paddle sports over the past few years.
I think the most difficult adjustment for me when I got home was just learning how to navigate my new life, my new normal, so to say. I had to learn how to shower differently. Driving is completely different. I have to drive with hand controls now. Being a single mom. If it wasn't for my son, I really don't think I would be here. He's my pride and joy. So he helps me daily. He's incredible. He helps out so much. He's got to do so much more than the average 10-year-old really should have to do.
I think any single mom has it tough. Being a single mom in a wheelchair is really tough. And she's one tough athlete as well. She's made the national sled hockey team. She's taken right to paddling as a natural. I'm confident that she's going to be the National Paralympic 200-meter female sprint champ next year.
Training with Chuck started out chasing him down. I followed Chuck around the waterways, ocean, inland, everywhere, constantly staring at the back of him, trying in vain to beat him.
You're going to start hurting. Every muscle in your body's going to be burning.
This was the challenge that I needed. It gave me purpose. It was my way of giving back to the people that had supported me.
Nick did one of the things Team River Runner wants to do. Nick has made paddling a way of life. He's eating, he's breathing, he's thinking like a guy who wants to be national champion. And the next thing you know, 2 years in a row, Nick is national champ in his division for Paralympic sprint kayaking for the U.S. I had a request from an organization that works primarily with autistic kids to do something with them. And I thought, well, this might be a great opportunity if we could get these kids working with some wounded warriors. So you take water and paddling, which is therapeutic and healing in itself, and then you add on another layer to it where now you're helping other people do things, people worse off than you by by some yardsticks. It's a great combination for the vets and for the kids.
Being able to give back, seeing their smiles, that's been the greatest reward. Their perception isn't tainted, whereas the adults have preconceived notions of what people can and cannot do. One with a congenital arm defect came up and said, "Hey, we're related. You know, his arm, my leg," he sees it just as that and moves forward in life.
I'm a vet also, so there's always a common bond among vets. You know, we do think somewhat the same, and we talk the same, and you're trained. You don't stop, you don't quit. You know, you do what needs to be done to get the job done. So there's something special about it.
Once a Marine, always a Marine. Every training session would be the same as when I was active duty, training my guys and myself in the aspect of everything I do has the attention to detail, the drive, the discipline, as if my life depends upon it.
You know, it starts off rough. It is tough in the beginning, but you know, you get through it. You realize that life does go on, that you still can enjoy everything that you enjoyed before. You just have to go about it a different way. It may take a little bit longer, but you know, you can do it. Just get out there and make yourself do it, because you won't know what you can do until you try.
Since we last spoke to Nick Miller, Nick has been competing and winning, and Lori is as busy as ever. She joins us now here with her instructor, Chuck Conley. Lori, what is the latest in your life?
I recently just had tryouts again for the USA women's sled hockey team and made the roster again for the second year in a row, and training now for hopefully sprint kayak next year for nationals, I hope.
What's going on with Nick? I understand he's just racking in the
Nick regrets
honors.
he can't be here today. He's actually packing his things. He's moving to the Olympic Center in Atlanta, and he's going to train for a living to try to make the World Championships next year.
Wow. What's going on with Team River Runner at this point?
No, we continue to paddle and recruit some athletes here and there and try to make the ones that want to be competitive as fast as we can.
Now, also joining us is Betsy Kennedy, a therapeutic recreation specialist.
Correct.
At
Yes.
ODU.
Yes.
Betsy, what happens when people come in? What do you say to them if they're interested in adaptive sports?
One of the challenges that we have in Hampton Roads is we don't have a cohesive connection between the different sports in Hampton Roads. So a lot of times people will come call me. Sometimes I have no idea how they get my name, and they ask, where can I find out about wheelchair basketball? Where can I find a quad rugby team? Things like that. So we try sort of by default to be a clearinghouse for that.
Okay, thank you. This is my buddy Gavin here. Gavin is Lori's son. Thank you for being here, Gavin. Gavin, as a young caregiver, your mom talked in the video about, she spoke about you being her caregiver. Tell me what you do as a caregiver.
I put the wheelchair in the back, pump the gas, make the bed, and bring laundry upstairs and that kind of stuff.
I'm sure that's helpful. Now, you're 11 years old, right? What would you tell another child who would be doing the same thing you're doing, who might have to be a caregiver for his or her parent?
To just take it easy and to be calm.
That's great advice. Thank you very much. If people are interested in becoming a part of Team River Runner, what do they have to do?
They can contact us. You can find us on the web. You can find us on Facebook. Contact me directly or contact the national office in D.C., and we'll take you paddling.
Okay. All righty. Lori, what do you say to folks that might be interested, or what would your advice be to someone who might be interested in getting into adaptive sports but may say, well, I'm not sure if I'm strong enough or I have the abilities to do that? What would you say to encourage them?
You got to just jump right in. Yeah, you really do. I mean, when I got home from the hospital, I was just sitting on the couch and I was in a depression, I was in a funk, and I felt like I couldn't do anything anymore. I felt like my life was over. And but my brother found sled hockey for me right here in Virginia Beach. So I went out there and I made myself do it, even though I really didn't think that I could. And I got in that sled and I got on the ice, and as soon as I started moving and felt that wind in my face again and being able to move again and feel like I'm doing something physical with myself again, it was an instant just relief, happiness. It was an incredible feeling. I was instantly addicted, and it made me feel like I had my life back again in some way. So it's so important to just jump right in. Don't even think twice about it. You've got to try. You won't know what you can do until you try. And I'm so glad that I finally did, because I really have a wonderful life back again.
Okay. Betsy, can you share a story? You don't have to give us a person's name, but of someone who's was competing and maybe didn't even think about getting involved, and now is involved and so excited that they took that step?
Yeah, actually, it's a teenager, actually, who we came to a Paralympic Experience Day, and it was for children, so it was primarily little kids, and he was a teenager, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it, and then we put him in a sports chair for wheelchair basketball, and his face lit up. It was amazing, because you can do so much more in a sports chair than you can do in sort of your everyday wheelchair. And to watch him just move around the court, and then we put him on a hand cycle, and he went so fast around the track. And his smile, it was amazing. So so many times people don't realize all of the adaptive equipment, so people think they can't do it, and we can make it happen.
Okay, wonderful. Jim joins us now. Go right ahead, Jim.
Thank you for being here. My name is Jim White, and I'm a psychotherapist in the area, and I specialize in therapeutic hypnosis, and I give particular focus on resiliency. Recent study in New York, 9/11, 90,000 of 100,000 persons who were suspected of trauma did not need anything. They just needed to live their resiliency. So I'm wondering, what would be your description of resiliency, either in your own recovery or those that you work with? Maybe even what is your description of healing? What is that future? How do you arrive to that?
Well, I guess healing isn't just healing your body, but you need to heal mentally as well, because that was the main thing that I had trouble with after my accident was getting past that and accepting my new normal and moving on with that. So I think that's the main part of being resilient is, healing yourself, mind and body.
Okay, Betsy, do you?
Yeah, I think adaptive sports could have a huge impact on resiliency, and it just overcoming something, saying I could never do that, I'm not going to ever be able to do that again, and then feeling success, and then taking that and saying, well, if I could do that, maybe I can do this as well. So facing other obstacles and knowing that, I was successful on the basketball court or on the tennis court or with the hand cycle or paddling, and I can overcome other things.
I think doing adaptive sports definitely will raise the level of intestinal fortitude, if you wanted to look at a different word than resiliency, in individuals. It helps build them back up to a better state than they were when they started.
It seemed like to me that the activity did pull resilience, and I think adaptation and those other things that you mentioned are also true. Thank you very much for everything you do.
Chuck, how did you come about with this whole idea in the first place to do Team River Runner? What was it that made you say, this is something we need, I'm going to do it?
I taught a surf kayak instructor class almost a decade ago, and some guys that were in it ran a chapter of Team River Runner in Philadelphia. And back then, Team River Runner was strictly a whitewater boating program for wounded warriors. And they told me about it, and I told them, man, that sounds awesome. I'm glad you guys are doing it. But we don't have whitewater here, and I don't have time. And then all of a sudden I met Nick Miller, and I found out the Team River Runner had changed its philosophy from strictly a whitewater boating program to let's get butts in boats. Let's get the guys out there. Wherever they are, we know it does them good. And so Nick and I said, well, let's start it. We see what it's done for him already. So we started the chapters. We're in our 5th year now.
Okay, and where would you like to see it go?
Yeah, it'd be great if eventually we even had like a home, because we're a hobo chapter. We just, wherever we take our boats and wherever we go paddle is where we are. But if we had a home, if we had storage, I think more people could come. We could have a more regular schedule. So we're slowly falling in on some things here.
Lori, I know you're doing like 3 different types of sports, but is there anything else out there that you really have thought about that you might want to get into? Because you seem to do everything well.
Well, thank you. Well, it's not really a sport, but I guess it could be. But I had a motorcycle. And
You have a motorcycle?
I used to.
Oh, okay.
And, obviously I can't ride a 2-wheel motorcycle anymore, but I very badly want to get a trike or, something with hand controls along that line someday, very badly. So that's my main thing that I'd really like to do also, but I really also want to try some more summer sports too. I haven't tried water skiing yet. And I've seen it, and I really want to get out there and give that a shot. And I also downhill ski, and that's awesome too.
I want you guys to talk a little bit about the role of caregivers. Lori touched on it in the video. We heard from Gavin here about caregivers. Talk to me a little bit about that important role that caregivers have when it comes to somebody wanting to compete and somebody wanting to be involved in adaptive sports.
I say caregivers support your athlete. Get behind them, help them do this thing. The better an athlete they become, I think the better it is all around in all areas of their lives. As far as wounded warriors or other people with disabilities that show up, usually once they come to us, we just shoo their caregivers away, and we get them in the boats and we do the paddling, and then we let them have them back at the end of the session. So the caregivers like to come and observe. Some of them even want to play. If they want to paddle with us, we let them do that too. So everybody gets to have some fun.
Betsy, how do you encourage people, or I should say calm their fears when they're starting something new?
It's providing a lot of support, but a lot of times it's just putting them in the equipment and then showing them how to use it. A lot of times my students sometimes will get in the equipment and show them this is how it's done. The hand cycles and things like that can be a little scary and intimidating. So it's just really just getting them in a piece of equipment, showing them how to do it, and then being by their side while they're starting. We do a lot of land sports at ODU. We haven't done really anything in the pool, so the water aspect isn't there for us.
And how do people find you and find these sports?
They can just call me in my office at ODU, 757-683-4703, and then I can direct them to Sportable in Richmond, and they can pre-register ahead of time, or they could just come that day. It's going to be held at the Student Recreation Center on campus.
Chuck, how do they reach out to you if they're interested in becoming a member?
They can find us at teamriverrunner.org. It has a list of all the chapters, so even if they're not local, there are about 40 to 50 chapters nationwide now of Team River Runner, so you can paddle just about anywhere. And of course, we're on Facebook at facebook.com/Team River Runner Virginia Beach, however that reads.
Okay. And finally, Lori, your advice to anyone that might be interested or thinking about it?
Just give them a call. And Chuck is also really great about if you have somebody new out there, having somebody who's doing it now to show them, that, hey, I'm disabled as well, so if I can do this, you can too, and kind of, pair them up and help them out that way.
Okay. Lori, Chuck, and Betsy, thank you so much. And we are out of time, but you can find all of the stories you've seen here tonight, along with many others, on our website at veterans.whro.org. There you'll also find information about our partners, along with resources designed to help veterans and their families through what can be a difficult transition as they move from active duty to civilian. Thank you for being a part of the WHRO Veterans Voices Town Hall. I'm Lisa Godley. Good night.
I was in the Army. I was in the 3rd Infantry Division. While I was in Iraq was when the housing crash happened. It was my term of service was up. I was ready to transition into the civilian world. So when I got home, I have to take care of my family. I have a mortgage payment. So it's extremely stressful for any veteran in that transitioning spot. Thankfully, I found an organization like Bradley Morris and CivilianJobs.com that specialized in placing veterans. They really tell the story to the company so they know to go look at veterans with a different eye. Those transferable skills like leadership, logistics, transportation, time management skills, all of those things that a military veteran brings to the table transfer greatly into corporate America.
Connecting military veterans with corporate careers. CivilianJobs.com. For more information, log on to WHRO.org/veterans.